I think it's adorable how we all have these conversations going on.
Yes.
Or like talkie,
Yeah.
and then talkie, and then giggle. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be doing stuff.
Okay, well, Warren came in
Yeah.
trying to reenact the George H.W. Bush funeral, meekly telling everyone good morning. Oh, morning. Morning.
What was that?
Morning. Morning. Anyway, he was being pretty cold to us this morning until we brought up drugs. And then he perked up all of a sudden like a little Pomeranian. So all of our panelists are here. Carol is here. She wasn't involved, by the way. I got to keep her record clean. She wasn't involved in the
She and I were talking.
conversation.
We were not in
Yeah,
that
we're talking about
conversation.
something else. Anyway.
Stafford was being good, too.
We weren't telling personal stories, but...
Was it the war?
Not on air, right?
Not on air, yeah.
Right.
So anyway, all the panelists are here. Carol Ross, Warren Cottle, and Stafford Barnett.
Good morning.
So the word I want to let go of, and it's like this is an impossibility, okay? The word I'm tired of talking about just in general is Russia, not for even the reason that you guys think, okay? It's because I started doing some things. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the oil prices that have quietly, why we've been paying attention to other things, continues to dip. And the latest thoughts on it are that it has to do with Russia's agreement with OPEC that it broke. And it's continuing to put supply into the market, which is why you're seeing the lower oil prices, lower crude prices, which are then translating into lower gasoline prices as well. Stafford, in what you do, what are you seeing? I mean, does this dip? I mean, are we already at such a low point locally in the industry that a dip like this is changing anything? Or do you see people who might have been trying to come back at a certain level that aren't now? Or is it a mixed bag?
Companies run a lot leaner than they used to. So I still see the projects that are scheduled for next year still continue to take place. I think what I see is a lot of people frustrated, a lot of people who voted for Trump frustrated when he comes out and says, I want lower oil prices for everybody, which he's done multiple times now. Look, there's concern that the global economy is potentially it's closer to the verge of a collapse than it's been in a long time, which would be because the price of oil and gas is only about supply and demand. There's very little else that can influence. So if demand drops and supply stays up, we got a problem. The United States just became a net exporter of oil for the first time ever, which was big. And we've got a lot of our natural gas systems coming online in Louisiana that are exporting natural gas and continuing to invest despite everything that's said. Tons of money being invested in Louisiana. So, look, Russia's not going to play by the rules. It never has had to play by the rules. I mean, I don't want to delve too far into it, but it's obvious this administration is not going to do anything about Russia if it does anything wrong. I mean, it is what it is, right? Just yesterday, Trump said he had nothing going on with Russia, and Chris Cuomo gets on TV last night and goes, "Here's a letter of intent if you're trying to build a hotel." I mean, so there's so much going on. Russia's going to do. Russia's going to do.
So yesterday, Carol, we talked to someone, our Simon Owen, who was reporting on Putin and he's kind of on a rap music crusade right now, trying to get those kind of things under control. You have
I try not to
stuff.
think about that.
You have there are just so
I don't want that
many,
image in my head.
So many things happening right now. Is Russia freewheeling, in more things than just
Well,
oil?
I think you have to remember that that's about all they have in their economy is oil.
Mm-hmm.
And when the market tanks in oil, Russia's in bad shape. They're in bad shape. Their GDP is about a minuscule fraction of ours. And as Tucker Carlson continues to point out, Russia's not the threat, really. China's the real threat. And nobody wants to pay attention to that. It's all about Russia because of this connection to Trump and supposed connection to Trump and collusion and all this other kind of stuff. Russia is really on the ropes if oil goes down that much. They've got to sell their oil. That's all they have.
But it's kind of a short-end thing because you're making money from selling it. But if you're flooding the market, then you're ruining your own price.
And it performs other functions where it just destabilizes the whole world market and, it hurts us. And let's face it, there's no love lost in terms of the sanctions that Trump has wrapped up. Trump has put more sanctions on Russia than any other president. I mean, he has really been ramping up the sanctions on Russia.
So how does it affect here in the oil industry from what you're seeing?
Well, if the prices go down, of course. So, and it also affects the whole thing, the whole geopolitical thing. But that's all Russia has. I don't even know if I'm sure they have ulterior motives. They do on everything, but this is the only way that people can pay attention to Russia as far as an economic entity, because they have nothing else but oil.
Warren, a lot of what you have done professionally in looking at certain businesses and what it takes a business to thrive, and you've said it multiple times, it ultimately comes down to how money is made and if it can be made. Is this just a continuation of that explanation?
The big thing about the oil and gas industry right now, and it's what happened in Louisiana and what's happening in Texas, and you mentioned that thing about Midland, Texas, and how they were just blowing and going, and how many people that Ralph McInvale and them were housing and all of that. That equates right back to the thing about when the Gulf was doing well here, that those drilling rigs offshore, those deep water rigs, they've got like 250 people working on those things at any one time. I mean, so 10 of those rigs equated to 2,500 workers, which then equates to several more and all this, that, and other people that are doing service work with them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The real thing in Stafford hit around the head is supply and demand. And that what had happened back years ago is that the market now sets the price of oil. The market does. Countries don't. Countries cannot affect the price of oil to any relevant means. I mean, they can for a very short period of time. Saudi Arabia learned that back in the 80s or whatever, when they thought they could just set the price, and then OPEC said, that we're going to control it, and they found out that wasn't necessarily true. The Soviet Union used to be, for years, the world's largest producer of oil, and Russia still produces a lot, although it went down, and because the technology and such came in, they didn't keep up with that, but now that they are back producing a lot, but they also refine a lot of diesel and jet fuel. And that, those are the things that happen. But the real point is, in Louisiana especially, businesses go where it pays for them to be. The cost of doing business in Louisiana is much higher than it is in a lot of other places. So that's why they don't come here.
Stafford.
Yeah, but I'll step aside on that, but on land drilling, that's not the case. There's not a ton of land stuff going on. But I think it's important to note the two reasons that oil prices were originally depressed and why they're being depressed again. The first reason was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia elected to drill every well that they possibly could, do typical end-of-life treatments on wells as soon as they were up and running to try to boost output on these things. And that was an attempt to try to kill the fracking industry, because they saw the fracking industry as a true threat to them, and then they realized they couldn't stop it. And then now Russia is depressing the price as well. And when we sit back and we look at who our allies used to be and who our allies are now, we've got Saudi Arabia, who's murdered a journalist at the request of the prince, and we've got Russia, who's meddled in our elections. So we keep picking these bad actors as a country to be involved with, and it's unfortunate because it's really affecting the economies of Lafayette and Homa and these offshore drilling-based economies.
All right, it's 7:19. We are right smack in the middle of Wingin' It Wednesday. Yesterday was supposed to be a big day when it came to Mike Flynn. Turns out the nightmare isn't over for him yet, like he thought it was going to be. We will now hear more going through to March. There's more Wingin' It Wednesday coming up. All right, so yesterday's sentencing of Mike Flynn, former national security advisor under the Trump administration, didn't end as he was hoping and his people were hoping, because it's now continuing, or it has been continued until March, when it's got to come up again. The judge in the case had some harsh words for him and also asked some point-blank questions. Were you entrapped by the FBI? His attorney said, no, my client wasn't. Putting to rest a lot of things, that he was ambushed and everything else. Carol, where does it leave this? Because I give Trump the benefit of the doubt on this one, because when Mike Flynn was picked, as far as everyone knew, he was a widely supported pick. I mean, until people started digging into his son's social media and other things like that. But when he was picked, there were people on both sides that were fine with that, because he had been a career military leader.
Well, I love all the posturing in Washington. They all do the very same thing that Mike Flynn did. The problem was he did lie to the vice president. I think that was that was the real for Trump and for the administration. But and then he also did not disclose the fully, and it wasn't about Russia per se, because he had every right as a member of the transition to meet with any person from a foreign government. That was no problem. And the judge actually almost laughed in the courtroom when they tried to bring up the Logan Act. Ha! Like, that's a joke. Nobody has ever been charged under the Logan Act of, dealing with foreign agents, et cetera. He had every right to meet with Kislyak. The problem was he didn't disclose his deep relationship with Turkey and that he was on their payroll. And so that was a problem. He lied to the people that he was working with. But as far as the swamp is deep, everybody knows that. Everybody has these relationships. And the problem was his lying. Was he entrapped by the FBI? I would say when what's his face, the disgraced McCabe, told him, well, no, they came into the White House. Normally when you do that, even Comey admitted under testimony, well, I wouldn't have done it that way if it were any other president. He just about virtually said that. If it had been any other president, like under Bush, H.W. Bush or Obama, I wouldn't, George Bush or Obama, I wouldn't have done it that way. But, this was a different situation. So they didn't follow the protocol, setting up the meeting, certain standards, going back and forth and all. They just came in and said, we want to have a little conversation. You don't really need a lawyer.
So why didn't, if that was the case,
I wouldn't say that was entrapment, but I would say it was misrepresentation of what they were up to.
But wouldn't Flynn's attorney jump on that? If the judge said was
well, I'll tell you what, I think they're very nervous because he hasn't been sentenced yet. He's not saying anything.
Gotcha. All right.
He's very nervous. He's not going to give up anything more than he has to. He's already been, railroaded, giving up less.
Stafford, what do you make of it? Is it more of the same? I know a lot of the Russia investigation in what has been called a hoax by a lot of people. This is
a lot of people who aren't very informed.
Well, this is kind of just the latest one that we've seen. We heard from President Trump at the beginning; he was going to hire the best people. I think Mike Flynn looked promising when he was hired. It wasn't a controversial hire.
Well, it was though, because the Obama administration warned the Trump administration about Flynn being potentially jeopardized. The Obama administration went to Trump and said, "Hey guys, we are concerned about him being under investigation," and the acting attorney, I'm not sure she's attorney general or federal prosecutor of New York that took.
Are you talking about SDNY, the Southern District of New York, that investigation?
I'm not sure if what her name was or what her role was, but was one of the people who was warning the Trump administration about Flynn, but she was an Obama holdover, right?
Sally
so there was a concern that because she was aligned with Obama, that's what was going on. You got to back up and remember what Flynn was trying to do. President Erdogan of Turkey did a small coup a couple of years ago, took over power of the country, and blamed it on a cleric who has been in the United States for years now, and was trying to pay Flynn and his associates to get him out. At one point, it was referred to as kidnapping. Okay, I don't think he ever kidnapped anybody, but he was lobbying to get the guy out. He did talk to the Russians on behalf of the Trump organization and said, "Please take it lightly." The judge postponed sentencing yesterday because he wanted to put him in jail. And Mueller's team was sitting there going, hey, he's given us a lot of support.
They recommended no jail time.
We recommend no jail time, 19 investigations he's helped us with. We arrested his business partners yesterday. And the judge sits back and told Michael Flynn, he goes, he told him to look at the flag. He goes, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of his official role under Trump, but it was
National Security Advisor.
Yeah, you're the National Security Advisor working on behalf of another nation. Referred to it as treason, right? And I think the reason it was postponed yesterday was because the judge wanted to put him in jail, and that's not what his attorneys or the prosecutors are wanted.
Interesting spot. Wow. Warren, to what Carol said about how many people have these relationships, that's just the kind of thing that usually comes out in vetting someone for a role. They exist. We know they exist. We see pictures of people together and relationships they have. Was this just missed, or was it just deemed to be not that big of a deal?
The real thing about it is that everybody in any high level capacity has relationships with people throughout their industry, whether it's in diplomacy, whether it's in government, whether it's in business, military, or whatever, and they cross boundary lines. And to say that somebody was representing another country while they were doing this and hell, that's everybody in government. That's people throughout business. I mean, you go back and look at the people that had conflicts of interest all the way along. We've now developed a thing that says that you can have a security clearance in this country if you're not even a U.S. citizen. You can have dual citizenship, which the State Department says if you got dual citizenship, you owe allegiance to both nations. And that's codified in federal law. And we're going to sit there and say that, we got thousands of pages of laws and whatever. And that used to, that these things didn't even come up, except when it just comes down to a strict witch hunt that we're going to do everything we can. What Flynn, I think, should have done yesterday when his attorney said, no, it wasn't entrapment, Flynn should have done what this guy that I know did in Houston one time in federal court. When he jumped up and told the judge, he said, Your Honor, I want to call for a recess. And the judge says, well, don't you think your counselor should be speaking for you in this court? And he said, no, sir, he's fired. And,
Okay, well, that seems to kind of seal the deal. Carol, you want to add something?
Two quick things. First of all, the only reason the Obama administration knew what was going on is because they were wiretapping everybody in sight through the NSA, and Clapper and Brennan both lied about it under oath to Congress. That's number one.
Absolutely.
Number two, Russia meddled. They meddle in our elections. We meddle in their elections. Everybody meddles in everybody's elections. Big whoop. They spent about, $4,700 on social media advertising. No, I mean,
no, I don't think that number is anywhere near.
No.
That number was way millions.
Yeah, that's
the number was
patently
millions of
incorrect.
Whoa,
They released the
wait.
report yesterday. You are absolutely way off base on that.
The original.
And here's the thing: you say that the governments work together Yes, America has done information campaigns in other countries. The difference is we haven't had it happen with a government colluding with
they were not
somebody running
colluding,
for
and
president.
nobody has found any
And by the way,
evidence that they
you
were
just made a
colluding. Not a
claim.
shred of
Hold on.
evidence that he
Whoa,
colluded.
Whoa, one
Okay,
at a
guys,
time.
let's
One
take
at
it.
a
You
time.
You just made a
Separate.
claim about the NSA wiretapping people that lies zero evidence. You have zero evidence of that. All you have is accusations. So let's
Excuse me,
let's
the AP,
go back.
James Rosen.
Let's go back and let's argue this based on fact.
Unmasking. Samantha
Warren?
Powers requesting information and unmasking. Susan Rice requesting information and unmasking. Yeah.
Real quick, Warren.
That's based on facts. Absolutely. Absolutely, it's on facts that they wiretap everybody. That was part of the act that went through. Dick Cheney said that was the best thing I did. More proud of that than any other thing. It's fact. The fact is that we have colluded with other countries up to the point of killing their candidates who were running for office that we didn't like. You can go back to several of them. Go back to DM in Vietnam. Go back to these people who have these relationships with different people that they're not supposed to have. Go back to a Supreme Court justice by the name of Tom Clark during the Truman administration, when Tom Clark came out that he was currently on the payroll for and representing a man from New Orleans by the name of Carlos Marcello while he was on the U.S. Supreme Court. He did not get thrown off the court. He stayed on there. Harry Truman said, I don't think it's because Tom Clark is a bad guy. He's just such a dumb SOB.
And with that, we need to take a break. We're going to come back with another big issue. The wall. Is it going to happen? Is it not? Is this the read my lips moment? We'll get into all that coming up on Wingin' It Wednesday. All right, 7:36 now. Warren, you may remember last week on this show, Stafford wasn't here, so it was very quiet and very tame.
Yes.
No
Everybody agree with
opposing
each other.
views. Yeah, no opposing views. And so we were actually talking about what had happened in the Oval Office between Schumer and Pelosi and Trump and the statue of Pence. It wasn't two people there. Pence, he stayed out of there. He didn't want to get in the mud. So what was said there, the headline was, I will be proud to shut down the government for the wall funding. And it seems like yesterday it changed a little bit. Now the cabinet, the different cabinet members and their agencies, Trump is asking them to find the $5 billion now. The criticism, though, that sprung up pretty soon after, pretty instantly, you know how the internet works. Well, don't taxpayers fund the agencies? So now not only is it not Mexico going to pay for it, not only is it not a new spending bill, it's going to be from the agencies. What do you make of that? And do you think if this, well, you know what? I'll save that. I have a two-pronged question to this story. But what do you think about that? Is it ultimately what going to be taxpayers who are going to be asked to pay for it?
Taxpayers from where? Here or from Mexico?
United States.
Well, he has
Point taken, but go ahead with
he
your
has
comment.
renegotiated NAFTA, which was one of the signature acts of former President George H.W. Bush and William Jefferson Clinton, and that it may create a little bit more of an imbalance in some of our trades. So that's a good point. But look, if he can't find $5 billion, then there's something wrong in there somewhere. I think he's already got it. And but I do believe that he needs to go ahead and draw that line in the sand and absolutely stand firm on it. You want to shut the government down? Let's shut it down. And what we need to do is erect the barriers out in front of Congress like they did for the World War II museum when Obama and them shut it down. And just say, okay, now members of Congress don't get in. You don't get to go to work.
Yeah.
You don't get to park here.
So do you think if this doesn't end up happening, and I'm going to ask the other panelists the same questions, if we reach the end of the first term and it doesn't end up happening, will this be one of those absolute things Trump said on the campaign trail that people will say, we really wanted the wall, we're not going to vote for him again?
Well, look, here's the real damage on it is that you've got Republicans who are refusing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That is what he campaigned for. That is what the American people said they wanted. It is still a high priority that the American people wanted, security on the southern border. And you still have Republicans up there who are running backwards like a bunch of crawfish, saying that well, we don't know, blah, blah, I'd say this is a line in the sand. He needs to stand firm, and he needs to go out there in 2020 and campaign and go down to congressional levels or whatever and say he, and she, and that one, they were working against you, so kick them out of office.
Carol, the thing about it is, you kind of watch it as it's happening, and I have to imagine, because this is how I would feel. If I was Trump, okay, I don't have much better hair. It's a different color, but it's still kind of terrible.
At least it's real.
It's all right. If I'm sitting there, I have to be mad every single day that I didn't get this done when we had both the House, the Senate, and the presidency, because now it seems even further from reality.
So that wasn't his fault, was it?
Yeah.
That wasn't his fault. It was Congress's fault. By the way, they're doing it in any other thing, but don't say the W word.
Don't say the wall.
Don't say the W word. We're going to have a fence, which is what the Democrats, not more than 5 years ago, supported $25 billion for a wall, and now they're balking at $5 billion. They're all on video. There's such a thing as video, and they're all saying we have to have border security. We have to know who's coming into our country. That would be Barack Obama who said that.
So is it
we need to know who's coming into our country.
Wall? Is that the turnoff? Because
the word is Trump.
Okay.
They will not give Trump anything he really wants. And what he ran on, and they're trying to damage him for his reelection, what he ran on was border security and building a wall. And they're denying him that, his own Republican Party, which is why a lot of them in Congress especially just bowed out, did not run again because they were so damaged from how they were not cooperating with this Republican who got, the voters supported him chiefly on immigration. That was one big thing. And the economy. Well, he's doing really well on the economy, so they can't go after him for that. So we're going to deny him the one big thing that he really campaigned on, which was the defining issue for Trump, the immigration issue. Many people are worried about border security. So now they're all saying a fence or some kind of barrier. We've got to have border security. That's a good word. That's a good term to use. It polls well in focus groups and all that, and people want border security. And so they're going with that. Whether the Democrats come along, I don't know. But I do know that, they haven't figured out Trump yet. He'll go for the max, and then he'll start negotiating. Mm-hmm. He'll go for the max. He wants the $5 billion right now for the wall, and now he's negotiating.
The back and forth, and then we're going to get to Stafford. Earlier, so Trump says, we're going to build the wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Okay, so then we moved on, and then you had some of the people in his circle saying, well, no, it's going to be a combination of things. We are in the 21st century. We don't need a wall. We can do drones. We can do everything else.
Well, there's some areas that are natural barriers. You don't need a wall.
What I'm saying is, then you have Trump do an interview right after and said, forget what he said. I said wall. So I think people are still confused.
Well, he does keep them off balance.
Yeah.
I think that's his
But
modus
even,
operandi.
Even the voters.
in everything.
Is it a wall? All the thousands of miles?
I don't think anybody ever thought that.
But it seems like he does. I guess I understand.
So you're trying to say, was he being literal or figurative?
Bingo.
Well, I mean, I think there are many people who have said, and I don't think he's a stupid person, contrary to what a lot of people think. I think there's method in his madness. And so when he pushes on a wall, that's what he promised. However, he understands, he knows very well that there are some areas that a wall is not necessary.
Okay.
But where it is very important. I had an interesting call yesterday, too. There's a gentleman who said Texas is sitting on some kind of huge surplus. I think he said $90 billion or something like that. He said they should help build the wall. And by the way, that's something to think about. Why is Texas doing so well and Louisiana is so crappy?
Yeah, Stafford. We had a story in the news that talked about, kind of going back. It was a story about Obamacare, but it explained how it was able to get through. How it didn't get a single Republican vote, but it didn't need one.
Right.
The wall should not have needed one.
Right.
It shouldn't have needed a Democrat.
Right. Yeah. You got to remember, Trump's not a good leader, and because of that, because of that, he can't get anything done. He couldn't get Obamacare overturned. He couldn't get the votes for that. He doesn't have the votes right now for the wall. He's incompetent, and he surrounds himself with incompetence. So, and you look at the turnover there, and if he says he hires only the best and he's going to drain the swamp, he keeps draining his best, I guess. People keep just leaving and leaving and leaving and leaving, or getting indicted and going to jail. It's the same old BS all the time. Look, Trump's a liar. He said that Mexico is going to pay for the wall. It was one of these things to fire up tribalism at his rallies, and then he'd say, "Well, the wall just got 2 foot higher." He had control of everything, and he couldn't get it past them, and he won't get it past now. Elections have consequences. The Democrats have the House. He will never get that wall as long as the Democrats have the House. Period. And he dropped his Trump card on the table like an idiot. He walks up and goes, "I'll own the government shutdown." Like that was the biggest gift you could have given Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. So it's the same old BS that we hear from him. The guy isn't really good at what he's doing. You picked an outsider. We wanted an outsider, and congratulations, you got somebody who doesn't know how to govern.
I want to ask Warren. I started with you on this, right? You've already talked about the wall, right?
A little.
Because I have another question. Well, you can follow up something, and then I have another question to ask.
Go ahead.
I'm going to totally switch topics. It's along the border, but I want to talk about what happened in Arizona with the appointment of McSally. You know how I handle things. This is how I tackle analysis of things. Is just to switch out the players, and to think. Say you had Mimi Methvin, Carol's fellow yogi. Mm-hmm. She lost in the 3rd district congressional race. Say Clay Higgins says, "I'm going to run a traveling Baptist circus, and I'm giving up my seat." And John Bell Edwards put her in that seat. I feel like everyone would be up in arms because she just lost in a recent vote. How do you feel about that? Or what are the implications?
Well, if John Bell Edwards did that, then the people would be up in arms because that would be illegal, because you do not appoint a representative for Congress when one of them leaves. That seat becomes open to somebody runs for that election. The Senate is different. They do get appointed to fulfill that till the next election comes up. I think the McSally appointment was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I think she's good. I think that compared to the 2 senators they had there, at least they're going to have one now that's a little bit good. Can I respond to
you may,
Mr. Barnett? Mr. Barnett is either very naive or, like Ronald Reagan said about our liberal friends, it's not that they're dumb. It's just the fact that they know so much. It's not so. And for that man to sit here and talk about Trump is not a leader. He doesn't know how to govern. He has not gotten anything done, and that the Democrats are controlling Congress, and he will never get anything. Some of that may be right. And he said the worst thing he could possibly do is say, "I will own the shutdown." All right? Every time there's been a government shutdown, the administration has won. Mm-hmm. Every time, and this is not going to be any different. And so, no, I agree. Trump has not gotten anything done. We've got tens of thousands of jobs coming back into this country. We got businesses that are relocating back into this
real
country.
GDP 3% that they said would never happen.
That's right. We got phenomenal growth going on in this country. And you know that on top of that, the people overall, I think, are feeling better about life in general and going forward, and instead of sitting there all depressed and you know, now the anti-Trumpers are depressed. They need psychiatric help. I
Say
understand
one
that.
quick thing too.
But you
hold
know, but for the rest of us, you know, we're going on, and the world
We're
is
kinda
keep
happy.
turning around. The
I'll let
sun's coming
We're
up
just a
tomorrow,
little
and
happy.
Trump is getting it done.
I'll let you respond, Stafford, then Carol will wrap us up, and Bernie has a question
Okay,
too.
I'm just curious. Forgive me because I was I got an alert yesterday from CNN about Alan Greenspan saying it's coming. The big fat market correction is coming, so you investors better run.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious what you guys think about that
Well,
in reference to our country.
I'm going to
and
answer
Trump.
that in the response to this. So, first off, I agree that jobs are coming back, and if you look at the data, right, from where we had at the last crash to where we are now, which would be roughly 8 years ago to about a month ago, the stock market almost hit 26,000. I think it peaked over that at one point, and I want to say below that. I don't know what the bottom number was before that, but that was 6 years under Obama, 2 years under Trump. And yes, it did increase the angle under Trump. It increased the rate at which we were growing. But it's looking like this year we're going to close out the stock market below where we started. Worst December that we've had since the Great Depression when it comes to the Dow Jones.
The Dow Jones Industrial is not representative per se of the gross domestic product.
And
That is
that
correct.
all
I
the
understand.
economists, all the economists do agree on that.
And let's
Yeah.
discuss your buddy you just bought up too.
Greenspan.
Yes.
Oh my God!
So
Don't get
here's
him
the point,
started.
though, right?
Don't get him
We-
started on Alan
we-
Greenspan.
The investors are shy because we're having inflation issues right now, which also helps with GDP growth.
The investors are shy.
So hear me out. So people are the Fed, which is an independent organization, is looking
Independent from what?
at increasing rates, and Trump's now going, "Hey, let it ride," right? And that's how inflation. The worst thing that can happen to a market is hyperinflation or stagflation. Those two things, and the way that we control it is by controlling our interest rates. Okay, so we've got somebody who doesn't understand that in office,
Oh my!
right?
Oh
God.
Lord! Keep on, keep talking.
We got somebody in here who's
a big one.
we got somebody in here who has 10 hours of free radio time a week who doesn't understand that. So look,
yeah.
it-
Go
it's,
ahead.
it,
It's Stafford.
macroeconomics is simple.
Get your own
it's something that
show.
you can learn.
See if you could keep it up. Get anybody to
caused it
advertise
to-
on
Okay,
it.
all right,
All right,
hold on.
here's the
Okay.
other thing.
All right, hold on. Let's let
this is
Carol,
one quick thing.
She's been sitting behind me. I've had my head turned. I apologize
Well,
for
there are
that.
a couple of things. First of all, on government shutdowns, which is where this conversation started. Clinton had 2. Carter had, I think, 3. Gerald Ford had 1. You know who had the most? Ronald Reagan. Who was the most successful president in my lifetime and many lifetimes? Ronald Reagan. He had 8. He had 8 because he knew when to draw the line. I hope Trump is studying that. He needs to draw the line on this. This is the issue. If this is not the defining issue, getting border security, I don't know what is. That's number 1. Number 2, in terms of the Fed operates as a quasi-independent agency, but they meddle all the time. When Obama was president, the reason the market began to grow is they kept the quantitative easing. Trump is not getting that little cooperation from the Fed. Virtually no conservative president gets that kind of cooperation from the Fed. They did 7 times quantitative easing. You know what that does? Monetize the debt. You know what that does? That props up the stock market. So everybody thinks the government, the economy is doing better than it really is. Now they're clamping down on Trump because we have a really good economy that is heating up a little bit, thank God. And now they want to clamp down on it by raising interest rates. So you see, the Fed, they are a political entity too. They're in the swamp just like everybody else.
And a lot of people will say, just having an office in Washington, D.C.,
Makes you stinky.
I mean, there's a ton of things that are supposed to be independent. We haven't seen it. I don't know if that's true with the
Yeah,
Fed.
we had a Fed
know.
official speak to our Rotary Club, and she's going on and on about this. A typical Fed bureaucrat, right, and trying to have it both ways and not really say anything but saying something. And so I said, well, basically, it looks to me like you're monetizing the debt. You're buying all these treasury bills and all that kind of stuff. And she said, well, no, we don't do that. And she just said that. Yeah, we do that. And I said, well, that's a distinction without a real difference. I mean, they're doing it. They were doing it during the Obama administration. They're clamping down now.
Mr. Cottle, please wrap this up for us.
Yeah, please.
Stafford
By announcing
brought
your
up- Stafford
candidacy in the
brought
next
up
Fed
inflation.
chair.
yes.
Stafford brought up inflation. Inflation happens when you have more money coming into the economy then you have goods and services for that to buy. And it's called, like what she just said, quantitative easing. When the Fed sits there and prints money, the government cannot print money in this country. So what do? We borrow the money from this quasi-private group that you said is independent, which are no more independent than the Klan was from themselves, and that you turn around and that let them print the money that they turn around, and the government says, well, we're going on the hook for it. We're going to borrow it. We're going to pay you interest to print it. And so when the economy grows, when the economy is good, inflation is zero.
That's why they call it Winging It Wednesday. We're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry. We're going to have to leave it there.
Okay.
How about we do a little bit of extra on Facebook Live?
Merry Christmas.
Well, we're going to come back. We have about 2 minutes. We're going to come back.
2 minutes.
It's 7:53 now at Newstalk 96.5 KPEL. All right, 7:55 now at Newstalk 96.5 KPEL. Mrs. Claus, I'm going to ask that you reach behind you. There are 3 boxes back there. It is the fun. I promise there is no women's underwear in there. I mean, it's our last Winging It Wednesday episode before.
The wife is missing.
So the one thing that the Bernie and I wanted to convey to you is that on Wednesdays, this is nothing more than a nut house.
Yes.
And so it's only fitting. It's only fitting.
In the words of Orange Juice
So it's
Jones,
not headphones?
You can open it.
y'all just a squirrel trying to get a nut. No, I was sick yesterday, so I couldn't go out and do that, and I forgot.
But
I
those
felt
are coming
really bad.
as well. But these taste better than you guys.
Yeah, and
this
headphones.
nut house. So anyway.
So this isn't salty?
Yeah. No, they're bitter. We have
Just like me.
we
No,
have
I'm just kidding.
sweet. We have bitter.
Thank you.
And we have I guess Warren would be cold smoked
I like it.
nuts.
Age.
Fermented.
Aged.
Fermented nuts.
Fermented.
So really, thank you guys for coming in.
Yes.
It's always such a lively discussion,
And it is fun. And I do owe y'all headphones. I apologize for my lax ways, but I will get it done.
they will have
It's okay.
rabbit ears on them, but you know.
Well, see, I have to get the
Well,
little connector things.
I'm a
and so I'm gonna work on
self-sufficient
that.
capitalist. I have my own headphones.
There you
These
go.
guys should buy their own damn headphones. There is
believe
no
I should be
Santa
a-
Claus.
I believe I should be a burden.
Oh gosh! All right. Thanks to you guys.
I want to say something about what Carol just said. Capitalists get paid.
That's exactly right. By the definition, we're socialists.
You're a hopeful capitalist.
No, you're
Hopeful
just
capitalist. I
you're
like
just
that. That's good too.
donors.
Hey, trust me. Us not getting headphones, that's how capitalism works. I promise you.
7:57 now. We're back after this.